Hey everyone, welcome back to my podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with me today because we're diving into something I know so many of you have asked me about repeatedly. You know, I get messages all the time from people saying they understand English pretty well. They can read it, they can listen to movies and shows, but the moment they have to actually speak with someone, they freeze up completely. That nervous feeling when you want to join a conversation but your mind goes blank? Or maybe you're at a party and someone starts talking to you and suddenly all your knowledge just vanishes? Well, my friends, today's episode is going to completely transform how you approach speaking English with literally anyone, whether that's your boss, a stranger you just met, a friend from another country, or even someone behind the counter at a cafe. We're going to break this down step by step throughout this entire episode, and I promise you, by the end, you're going to feel so much more confident about opening your mouth and actually having real conversations in English. Before we jump in, though, I want to ask you something really important. If this podcast is helping you on your English journey, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. And hey, if you're loving this content, please share it with a friend who's also learning English. I also want to make sure you know about our podcast playlist on the channel. We have so many incredible episodes in there, covering everything from grammar to vocabulary to exactly what we're talking about today, real conversational skills. Make sure you check out the podcast playlist to binge all of our episodes together. You can learn so much by going through them in order. Okay, let's get started because I cannot wait to share what I've discovered about making English conversations feel natural and easy. So let's start with the absolute foundation of everything we're going to talk about today, and that's your mindset. Your attitude about speaking English is honestly more important than your vocabulary or your grammar knowledge. Here's what I've learned from working with thousands of English learners, and I mean thousands. The single biggest obstacle is not that people don't know enough English, it's that they believe they need to be perfect before they can talk to someone. Can I tell you something that might blow your mind a little bit? English is not actually about perfection at all, not even close. In fact, the most natural, flowing conversations are often the messiest ones grammatically. Think about when you talk in your native language. You use fillers, you repeat yourself, you change your mind mid-sentence. Native English speakers do this constantly, right? They say and like, and they pause, and they restart sentences. That's just what actual human conversation looks like. It's not the textbook version that you learned from grammar books. When you're talking to a native speaker, I promise you, they're not sitting there with a red pen checking your grammar. They just want to understand what you're saying. They want to connect with you. That's literally it. I think one of the most freeing realizations I had in my own language learning journey was understanding that communication is about connection, not perfection. You could have perfect grammar and sound like a robot, or you could have a few grammar mistakes but sound warm and authentic and real. People will choose authentic and real every single time. Your goal when you're speaking English should be to be clear and confident, not to be grammatically flawless. Think about it this way. If someone says to you, "I go to market yesterday," yes, technically that's wrong, but you know exactly what they mean, right? The verb tense is incorrect, but the communication happened. You understood them. That's the whole point of language. It's a tool for communication, not a tool for showing off how much grammar you know. So I want you to release that pressure right now. Let it go. Decide that your English doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. Say it out loud if you need to. My English doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful, because it doesn't. And the moment you release that pressure, you're going to feel so much lighter when you're having conversations. I've seen this transformation happen with so many people. They go from being terrified to speak to becoming natural conversationalists in a matter of weeks, just by shifting their mindset from "I have to be perfect" to "I want to communicate and connect." That's the first piece. That's the foundation. Everything else we talk about today builds on this understanding that you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing to try. All right, so now that we've got the right mindset in place, let's talk about how to actually start a conversation. And the most basic, universal way to do that is with a greeting. Greetings are actually your secret weapon because they're familiar, they're safe, and they happen in the exact same way across pretty much every culture and every situation. Someone approaches you, or you approach someone, and you exchange a greeting. Now, the simple "hello, how are you?" is absolutely fine, and it works in almost any situation. But let me give you some variety, because depending on where you are and who you're talking to, different greetings are going to feel more natural. If you're in a professional setting, like you're meeting someone at work or at a business event, you can say, "Hi, it's great to meet you," or "Hello, I'm really glad to see you here today." These are polite, they're warm, they show respect. If you're in a more casual setting, like you're at a party or you're meeting someone at a coffee shop or at a social event, you can absolutely be more relaxed. "Hey, what's up?" Or "How's your day going so far?" These are friendly and approachable. And then there's that sweet middle ground where you're not sure how formal to be. In those situations, I always recommend starting with something like, "Hi, how are you doing?" This is casual enough that it won't feel stiff, but it's also respectful enough that it won't come across as too informal. Here's something really important that I want you to understand. When someone responds to your greeting, they're usually going to say something like, "I'm doing well, thanks, how about you?" Or "I'm good, how are you?" And then what? You respond. It's that simple. You don't need to panic. You don't need to overthink it. You just say, "I'm doing great, thanks for asking." Or "I'm doing well, I appreciate you asking." Or even just, "I'm good, thanks." Keep it simple. Keep it genuine. Let me give you a real example of what this looks like in practice, because sometimes it helps to actually visualize it, right? Imagine you're walking into a networking event or a party, and you see someone standing near the refreshment table. You walk up and you say, "Hi, I'm Lily. How are you doing this evening?" The person smiles and says, "Hey, Lily, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm Sarah." You say, "It's really nice to meet you, Sarah. Are you enjoying the event so far?" This entire exchange takes maybe 15 to 20 seconds, but you've accomplished something really important. You've made contact. You established that you're both friendly people who are open to conversation. You've learned their name, and now you have a foundation to build on. That greeting is like the handshake that starts the entire conversation. It sets the tone. It tells the other person whether you're open and approachable or whether you seem closed off. So it's worth putting a little bit of thought and care into it. Here's what I want you to do. And this might feel a little silly, but it actually works. Practice your greeting in the mirror. Say, "Hi, I'm Lily. How are you doing today?" while looking yourself in the eye and smiling. Notice how your energy changes the entire tone of what you're saying. Then, say it again without smiling, without making eye contact, with your shoulders hunched. You'll immediately see the difference. Your words might be the same, but the message is completely different. The first version says, "I'm happy to see you." The second version says, "I'm uncomfortable and I don't really want to be here." So practice that greeting, but practice it with positive energy. Practice it with a smile. Practice it like you genuinely want to meet this person. Because even if you're nervous, you can pretend to be confident until it becomes real, right? That's actually a real thing. It's called fake it till you make it, and it genuinely works. Okay, so you've greeted someone, you've introduced yourself. Now what? How do you keep the conversation going so it doesn't just fizzle out after 30 seconds? The answer is questions. But here's the thing. Not all questions are created equal. There are questions that kill conversations dead in their tracks, and there are questions that open conversations up and make them flow naturally. Let me explain the difference. If you ask someone a yes or no question, they can answer it with one word, and then the conversation comes to a screeching halt. For example, if you ask, "Do you like coffee?" they can just say, "Yes." And then what? The conversation is dead. But if you ask an open-ended question, one that can't be answered with just yes or no, it invites the other person to actually think and share and give you something to work with. So instead of, "Do you like coffee?" you say, "What's your favorite type of coffee?" or "How do you like to take your coffee?" Suddenly, they have to give you an actual answer. They might say, "Oh, I'm really into cold brew. I make it at home every week." And now you have something to respond to. You have information. You have a direction for the conversation to go. This is the secret to conversations that feel natural and easy. You ask questions that require real answers, open-ended questions, questions that start with what, where, when, why, or how. Instead of, "Are you from here?" say, "Where are you originally from?" Instead of, "Do you work nearby?" say, "What kind of work do you do?" Instead of, "Do you have hobbies?" say, "What do you like to do in your free time?" See the difference? One forces them to actually think and share. The other can be answered in one word. Let me give you another real-world example because I think this is so important. Imagine you're sitting next to someone on a bus or a train, or you're waiting for an appointment. You could say, "Is this your first time taking this route?" If they say no, the conversation stops. But if you say, "How often do you take this route?" they have to give you a real answer. They might say, "Oh, every single day. I take this train to work." And now you can follow up with, "Really? That's interesting. What do you do for work?" Or, "Do you enjoy the commute?" Or, "Have you been doing this for a long time?" Every answer they give you is like a breadcrumb trail. You follow it, you ask related questions, you keep the conversation moving forward. This is such a valuable skill, and honestly, the more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. You'll start to naturally ask follow-up questions without even thinking about it. Here's a practice exercise I want you to do. Think of someone you know, maybe a coworker or a friend. Close your eyes and imagine a conversation with them. Start by asking them an open-ended question. Listen to their answer. Then ask another question based on what they just told you. For example, you ask, "What did you do this weekend?" They say, "Oh, I went hiking." You follow up, "That sounds fun. Where did you go hiking?" They say, "I went up to the mountains." You continue, "I love the mountains. What was your favorite part of the hike?" See how each question naturally leads to the next one? That's the rhythm of a real conversation. It's like a tennis match. You hit the ball to them, they hit it back, you hit it back again. Back and forth, back and forth. The person who's good at asking questions is the person who's good at conversations. It doesn't matter if your vocabulary is perfect. If you can ask genuine, interested questions, people will want to talk to you. Now, here's something I've found that helps so many people who are worried about running out of things to say. What you do is you take what the other person just said and you paraphrase it or repeat it back to them. This might sound simple, but it's actually incredibly powerful for a few reasons. Number one, it buys you time. If someone just said something and you need a second to think about what to say next, you can repeat what they said while your brain catches up. Number two, it shows the other person that you're actually listening. So many people wait for their turn to talk rather than actually paying attention to what the other person is saying. When you paraphrase what someone said, you're showing them that you heard them and that you care about what they're saying. Number 3. It naturally invites more conversation because after you paraphrase, you can follow it with a question. Let me show you how this works. Someone tells you, "I love reading books. I have a huge collection at home, and I try to read every single day." You could just say, "Oh, cool," and the conversation dies. Or you could say, "So you're really into reading. That's amazing. You must have a lot of books at home. What's your favorite book that you've read recently?" See what you did there? You paraphrased what they said. You expressed genuine interest, and then you asked a follow-up question. That's a 1-2-3 punch that keeps the conversation alive. Here's another example. Someone says, "I just got back from a trip to Japan. It was incredible." You could say, "Oh, nice," and move on. Or you could say, "You just got back from Japan? That must have been amazing. How long were you there?" Or, "What was the best part of your trip?" When you paraphrase what someone just said, you're doing several things at once. You're confirming that you understood them, you're showing interest, you're buying yourself time to think, and you're setting up the perfect opportunity to ask another question. I want you to practice this because it's such a useful skill, especially in the beginning when you're still building your confidence. Here's what you do. Listen to someone talking, and when they finish, instead of immediately responding with your own thought, take what they said and repeat a key part of it back to them as a question. They say, "I'm thinking about learning Spanish." You say, "You're thinking about learning Spanish? That's great. What made you decide to learn Spanish?" They say, "I've been working at my job for 5 years." You say, 5 years? Wow, that's a long time. Do you enjoy what you do? They say, "I'm planning a big vacation next month." You say, "A big vacation? How exciting! Where are you thinking about going?" This technique is like magic because it works in every single situation. You don't have to be creative. You don't have to have amazing insights. You just take what they said, echo a part of it, show interest, and ask a question. Practice this with the next person you have a conversation with, even if it's just in your native language first. Get comfortable with the rhythm of it, then translate it to English. Let me talk about something that a lot of English learners think is unimportant, but I'm going to tell you it's actually incredibly important. I'm talking about small talk. Small talk is those short, casual conversations you have about surface-level topics: the weather, traffic, sports, how busy the grocery store is, whether the coffee shop has a good vibe, what you did on the weekend. I know small talk sometimes feels pointless. I get that. You might think, why would I waste my time talking about the weather when I could be having a deep, meaningful conversation about philosophy or politics? But here's the thing. Small talk is the bridge that connects strangers. It's the warm-up that comes before the real conversation. It's the way humans naturally get comfortable with each other. Think about it. You wouldn't walk up to a total stranger and immediately start talking about your deepest fears and your life dreams, right? That would be weird. You start with small talk. You establish that you're both friendly people. You're both open to conversation. And then, gradually, if the connection is there, the conversation might go deeper. Small talk is also incredibly valuable when you're learning English because it's usually about topics that are right in front of you. You don't have to prepare anything. You don't have to memorize anything. You just comment on what you see or what you're experiencing. At the supermarket, you could say to someone near you, "These apples look really fresh today, don't they?" At a coffee shop, you could say, "They always seem to play such nice music in here. Do you come here often?" At a bus stop, you could say, "This line is taking forever, huh?" At a doctor's office, you could say, "I think I've been coming here for years and they still can't get their waiting times down." These comments are so simple, but they accomplish something really important. They break the silence, they establish that you're a friendly, approachable person, They give the other person permission to start talking to you if they want to. I think of small talk like the key that unlocks the door to bigger conversations. It might not seem like much, but that key is essential. Without it, that door stays closed. Here's what I want you to do. For the next week, I want you to make one small talk comment to someone every single day. It could be about the weather, it could be about the place you're in, it could be about something you're both experiencing. This weather is unpredictable today, isn't it? I love how quiet it is here in the morning. The barista here always remembers my order. Isn't that nice? These lines are getting longer and longer every week. These are simple, safe, non-threatening comments that open the door for conversation. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. I promise you, the awkwardness you feel making small talk is temporary. After you do it a few times, after you see that people respond positively and no one thinks you're weird for commenting on the weather, you'll feel so much more confident. Small talk is not a waste of time. It's a skill, it's a tool, and it's one of the most powerful tools you have for starting conversations in English. Okay, here's something that can literally change the entire tone of a conversation instantly. Compliments. Genuine, specific compliments. People light up when you compliment them. It doesn't matter if it's someone you know well or a total stranger. Everyone likes to feel appreciated and noticed. Now, I'm not talking about being fake or over the top. I'm talking about noticing something genuine about someone and mentioning it. And here's the beautiful thing about compliments. They're a conversation starter that almost always works. You could say to someone, "I really like your shoes. They're so cool. Where did you get them?" Immediately, you've given them a compliment, and they have something to respond to. They'll usually tell you where they got the shoes, maybe they'll ask you follow-up questions, and suddenly you're having a conversation. Or you could say, "You have such a great smile," or "I love how you always know what to say in meetings," or "Your presentation today was so clear and organized. I learned so much." These compliments are specific. They're not generic. You're noticing something real about the person, and when you do that, people respond positively. Here's something really important, though. Compliments have to be genuine. People can tell when you're being fake, so don't compliment someone about something you don't actually notice or feel. Instead, look for real things to appreciate about people around you. Maybe it's their fashion sense. Maybe it's the way they handle a difficult situation. Maybe it's their sense of humor. Maybe it's how they're kind to other people. These are the things worth noticing and mentioning. When you give someone a genuine compliment, you're doing several things at once. You're making them feel good about themselves, you're showing that you're observant and thoughtful, and you're setting a positive tone for the conversation. Let me give you some examples of compliments you can use in different situations. In a work setting, "I was really impressed with how you handled that client meeting. You stayed so calm and professional. I love your energy. You always make people feel welcome and comfortable. It's a great quality." To a stranger, "That's a really cool backpack. I love the design. Is it from a specific brand?" To a friend, "I really admire how hard you work towards your goals. I know it's not always easy, but you keep pushing forward." The thing about compliments is that they create a friendly, positive space. When you compliment someone, you're basically saying, "I see you, I notice you, I appreciate something about you." And people want to spend time with someone who sees them and appreciates them. So here's my challenge for you. Every single day this week, give at least one genuine compliment to someone. It could be a coworker, a friend, a family member, a stranger at the store. Just one genuine compliment every day. Watch what happens. Watch how people light up. Watch how it opens doors for conversation. Notice how it makes you feel to be the person giving the compliment. This is gold. This is the kind of skill that translates to every area of your life, not just English conversations. Okay, I need to tell you something that might surprise you. Being good at conversations isn't actually about being good at talking. It's about being good at listening. I know. We're talking about speaking English. Shouldn't the focus be on talking? But here's the secret that most people don't understand. The best conversationalists aren't the people who talk the most. They're the people who ask good questions and then actually listen to the answers. When someone's telling you something, they're giving you gifts. They're giving you information. They're giving you emotion. They're giving you material to work with. And if you're just waiting for your turn to talk instead of actually absorbing what they're saying, you're missing all of that. Real listening means you're not just hearing the words. You're actually thinking about what the person is saying. You're trying to understand not just the words, but the emotion behind them. You're picking up on what's important to them, and then your response shows that you genuinely understood. Let me give you an example. Someone tells you, "I had such a long, exhausting day at work today." A shallow response would be, "Ugh, that sucks," and then you move on. But a listening-based response would be, "That sounds like it was really rough. What happened? What made it so exhausting?" Now you're showing that you actually heard them. You understand that they had a hard time, and you want to know more. You're inviting them to share. Here's another example. Someone says, "I just got back from a vacation in Thailand. It was amazing." A surface-level response would be, "Oh, cool, that's nice." But a real listening response would be, "You just got back from Thailand? That sounds incredible. What was your favorite part of the trip?" When you listen and then ask questions based on what you heard, you're creating a real conversation. You're not just exchanging words, you're actually connecting with someone. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they're learning English is they're so focused on formulating their next sentence that they're not actually paying attention to what the other person is saying. Their brain is busy translating from their native language, trying to construct a grammatically correct response, checking for pronunciation. And then the other person finishes talking, and you realize you didn't actually hear most of what they said because you were too busy preparing your response. That's not conversation. That's just taking turns talking. So here's what I want you to practice. In your next conversation, I want you to focus 100% on listening. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Don't worry about whether your grammar is perfect. Just listen. Actually absorb what the person is saying. Notice the emotion in their voice. Notice what seems important to them. And then, when they finish, take a second to really think about what they said before you respond. This is harder than it sounds, by the way. It's a skill you have to practice. But when you do it, conversations become so much richer and so much more meaningful. Here's a listening exercise. The next time someone tells you something, instead of immediately jumping in with your response, repeat back to them what you understood. So, what you're saying is that you were really disappointed because you worked so hard and then things didn't work out the way you hoped? This accomplishes two things. First, it shows them that you were actually listening. Second, it gives them a chance to clarify if you misunderstood something. And it buys you a little bit of time to think about what to say. But the real magic happens when you move past that and you actually develop the listening skills so deeply that conversations feel natural and easy because you're not fighting against your own brain. You're in sync with the other person. All right, so you're asking good questions. You're listening. You're building a real connection with someone. But what about when you want to change the topic? What about when you want to move from talking about one thing to another thing without making it feel abrupt? That's where transition phrases come in. These are little expressions that help you move from one topic to another smoothly and naturally. Native speakers use these all the time, and when you start using them, your English immediately sounds more fluent and natural. Here are some of my favorite transition phrases. By the way, speaking of which, actually, that reminds me. Oh, one more thing. So this is kind of random, but I just thought of something. Let me show you how these work in practice. You're having a conversation with someone and you're talking about your job. You say, "I've been at my company for 3 years now. It's a great place to work." Then you want to change the topic. You could just abruptly say, "Where did you grow up?" And that's fine. It works, but it feels a little jarring. A smoother way would be, "So speaking of work, it actually made me think, how long have you been at your job?" Or you're talking about something that happened during the week and you say, "I had such a busy week, so many meetings." And then you want to ask about their week. You could say, "By the way, how was your week? Was it busy for you too?" These little transition phrases make the conversation feel like it flows naturally. Instead of it feeling like you're jumping from topic to topic, it feels like you're moving through a conversation smoothly. Here's another great one. Someone tells you about their weekend plans and they say, "I'm so tired. I need to just relax." And you say, "I totally understand. That reminds me, I've been meaning to ask you, are you doing anything fun later this month?" See how that transition phrase connected two different topics smoothly? Without the transition phrase, it might feel like you weren't really listening or like you were just waiting for your turn to ask about their plans. But with it, it feels like a natural progression. These transition phrases are so useful, and the beautiful thing is, they're very common. Once you start listening for them, you're going to hear native speakers using them constantly. Here's what I want you to do. Pick 3 transition phrases that feel natural to you. Maybe it's, "Speaking of that," "Actually," and "By the way." Practice using them this week. When you're having conversations, pay attention to when you want to switch topics and use one of these phrases to make the transition smooth. At first, it might feel a little artificial, like you're forcing it. But after you do it a few times, it becomes automatic, and suddenly your conversations start feeling way more natural and fluid. These small phrases are like the oil that keeps the conversation machine running smoothly. They prevent awkward stops and starts. They make it feel like you and the other person are really in sync with each other. Okay, let's talk about something that trips up a lot of people: making mistakes. What do you do when you say something incorrectly? When you use the wrong word? When your grammar is obviously wrong? First of all, let me assure you of something. Everyone makes mistakes when they're speaking. Everyone. Native speakers make mistakes, bilingual speakers make mistakes, even people who are fluent in multiple languages make mistakes sometimes. The difference between someone who's comfortable speaking English and someone who's not is not that the comfortable person makes fewer mistakes. It's that they're not afraid of mistakes. They don't let a mistake stop them from continuing the conversation. Here's what usually happens with people who are anxious about mistakes. They say something, they realize it's wrong, and then they stop talking. They freeze. They apologize profusely. They try to explain the mistake, and now the whole energy of the conversation has shifted. Now it's awkward. But here's what you can do instead. If you make a small mistake and you notice it, you can acknowledge it lightly and move on. You can say, "Sorry, I meant to say," and correct yourself, and then immediately continue talking. For example, you might say, "I go to the store yesterday," and then you immediately correct yourself. "Sorry, I went to the store yesterday. Anyway, I saw the most amazing thing there." That's it. You've acknowledged the mistake, you've corrected it, and you've moved on. The conversation keeps flowing. But here's the thing. If you're not sure if something is wrong, don't correct yourself. Just keep talking. Because maybe it's not actually wrong, or maybe the other person understood perfectly fine and didn't even notice. If you forget a word, you don't need to panic. You can just describe the word, you can use a different word, You can gesture. You can say, that thing, that... For example, if you can't remember the word for refrigerator, you can say, it keeps food cold. The big kitchen thing that keeps food cold. Most people will understand what you're talking about, or they'll offer the word for you, and then you've learned something. Here's another strategy. If you make a bigger mistake and the other person looks confused, you can ask them to help you. I'm not saying this right. How would you say it? People actually like helping you. It makes them feel good. I've had so many conversations where I make a mistake and the other person corrects me, and then we both laugh about it, and it actually brings us closer together. Making mistakes isn't a failure. It's part of the learning process. So here's my challenge for you. In your next English conversation, I want you to make at least one mistake on purpose. Say something you know is wrong. Notice how it feels. Notice what the other person does. Most likely, they just keep talking. They don't make a big deal about it, and suddenly, the fear around mistakes gets a little bit smaller. Because here's the truth. Your mistake is way bigger in your head than it is to the other person. They're probably not even going to remember it 5 minutes later. All right, I want to give you a strategy that helped me so much when I was building my confidence. It's the idea of preparing some conversation templates ahead of time. Now, I'm not talking about memorizing a whole script. That would make you sound robotic and unnatural, but I'm talking about having a few ready-made phrases and questions that you can pull out when you need them. These are like conversation building blocks. They're short, they're easy to remember, and they give you something to say when you're feeling stuck. For example, if you're meeting someone new, you could have a few standard things you ask. Hi, I'm Lilly. Have you been coming here long? Or what brings you here today? Or are you from around here? These aren't super original or creative, but they work. They're conversation starters that have worked millions of times before, and they're going to work for you. When you're meeting someone at a social event, you could prepare something like, this is my first time at one of these events. Have you been before? Or, do you know anyone here, or are you new too? When you're at work and you're trying to build a connection with a colleague, you might prepare something like, I've noticed you always seem to have things organized. What's your system? Or, how long have you been with the company? The beauty of having a few of these ready is that when you're nervous, your brain doesn't have to come up with something in the moment. You already have something. You don't have to be creative. You just use one of your prepared phrases. And here's the thing. After you've used these phrases a few times, they become so automatic that they don't sound like you're reading from a script. They sound natural because you've practiced them so many times. When I was learning other languages, I used to write out 3 to 5 conversation starters for common situations. Then I would practice saying them out loud until they felt natural, and then I'd go out and try them. The first few times, it felt artificial. I felt like I was acting, but after a while, they just became part of how I naturally talk. Here's what I want you to do. Write down 5 conversation starters that feel comfortable to you. These could be questions you ask when you meet someone new. These could be opening lines for small talk. These could be ways to transition to a new topic. Then practice saying them out loud. Practice them while you're driving. Practice them while you're taking a shower. Practice them in front of the mirror. Record yourself saying them and listen back. Do they sound natural? Do they feel good? Once you've practiced them enough that they feel comfortable, start using them in real conversations. You're not locked into these. You can adapt them, you can change them, but having them there as a foundation takes so much pressure off. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. What you communicate with your body often matters more than what you communicate with your words. Think about this. You walk up to someone with your arms crossed, your eyes looking down, your shoulders hunched. You could say, "Hi, how are you?" But your body is saying, "I don't want to be here. Please don't talk to me." Or you walk up to someone with a smile, open body language, relaxed shoulders, and you make eye contact. You say the exact same words, "Hi, how are you?" But now your body is saying, "I'm friendly, I'm interested in you, I'm happy to be here." The person is going to respond so differently to these two versions of the same greeting, not because of the words, because of the energy you're bringing. When you're having a conversation with someone, even if you're nervous, you can project confidence through your body language. It's actually one of the easiest things to control because you don't have to think of the right words. You just have to be aware of your posture, your facial expression, and your energy. Here are some things that create positive body language: a genuine smile, relaxed shoulders, open posture, not crossing your arms, eye contact, not staring intensely, but looking at the person while they're talking and while you're talking, nodding to show you're listening and understanding. When you're listening to someone, lean in a little bit. It shows you're interested. When you're talking, use a warm tone. Let your face be animated. Show emotion. This isn't about being over the top. It's about being genuine and present. One of the things I notice with confident speakers, even if they're not native speakers, is that they seem comfortable in their own skin. They're not apologizing for existing. They're not trying to take up less space. They're just there, being themselves, talking to another person. That's what people respond to. They respond to that sense of ease and confidence. Now, here's the thing. If you're nervous, you might not feel confident, but you can actually act confident. And after a while, the acting becomes real. It's not dishonest. You're not being fake. You're just expressing the confidence that you're building. Try this experiment. Next time you're about to have a conversation with someone and you're feeling nervous, take a second and adjust your body language. Stand up straight, drop your shoulders, smile, take a deep breath. Now have the conversation. You're probably going to feel slightly more confident just because your body is projecting confidence. Your body and your mind are connected. When your body is relaxed and open, your mind follows. Here's another thing. Eye contact is important, but it's not the same in every culture. In some cultures, maintaining too much eye contact is considered rude or aggressive. In other cultures, not maintaining eye contact is considered disrespectful. So pay attention to the person you're talking to and match their level of eye contact. But in general, in English-speaking cultures, people appreciate eye contact. It shows you're paying attention, it shows you're confident and genuine. So practice being aware of your body language. Practice in the mirror, practice with friends. Notice how your energy changes the entire tone of the conversation. Okay, so conversations become so much richer and more interesting when people share their actual thoughts and opinions. It's not just about exchanging information, it's about sharing perspectives and ideas and beliefs. And here's what I've noticed. People who are learning English sometimes hesitate to share their opinions because they're worried about grammar, or because they're not sure if their opinion is right, or if they're allowed to have a different opinion. But that's not how conversation works. In conversation, different opinions are good. Different perspectives are interesting. The whole point is that you're not the same person as the other person, so you probably have different thoughts about things. When you share an opinion, even a small one, you're adding your voice to the conversation. You're letting the other person know who you are and what you care about. And here's the beautiful part. Opinions don't have to be grammatically perfect. You can say them in simple language and still sound authentic and real. For example, someone says, "I love going to the beach." You could just say, "Yeah, me too," and move on. Or you could share your opinion, even if it's different. "I appreciate that, but I think I prefer the mountains. The ocean is pretty, but I like being up high where it's quieter." That's a complete opinion. You don't need fancy language. You don't need complex grammar. "I like the mountains. It's quieter there." The ocean is nice, but too crowded for me. Simple, clear, authentic. Here are some helpful sentence starters when you want to express an opinion. I think, in my opinion, I feel like, from my perspective, it seems to me, I believe. These are easy to remember and they work in almost any situation. I think Shakespeare was the most important writer ever. In my opinion, coffee tastes better in the morning than in the evening. I feel like learning languages is one of the best investments you can make. From my perspective, traveling is more important than fancy possessions. These are all valid opinions expressed simply. You don't need to have a philosophy degree to express an opinion. You just need to have a thought and the courage to share it. Here's what I want you to practice. Think of something you genuinely believe in or prefer. Coffee or tea? Mountains or beach? Books or movies? Early mornings or late nights? Working alone or working with people? Now practice expressing that opinion out loud using one of those sentence starters. I think coffee tastes better than tea. In my opinion, mountains are more beautiful than beaches. I believe that working with people is more fun than working alone. Do this 5 times with 5 different opinions. Get comfortable with the sound of your own voice expressing what you believe, because when you can do that, conversations immediately become more interesting and more real. One of the biggest anxieties people have about speaking English is the idea of talking to strangers, someone you don't know at all. And the anxiety is like, what if I mess up? What if they think I'm weird? What if they judge me? But here's the thing. Talking to strangers is actually one of the most valuable things you can do for your English, because strangers don't expect perfection from you. They don't know your learning journey. They don't care if you make a grammar mistake. They just want to have a pleasant interaction. And most people, if you're friendly and open, are happy to talk to you. Humans are generally social creatures. We like connecting with each other. Here are some low-pressure situations where you can practice talking to strangers. At a coffee shop, at a grocery store, waiting in a line, on public transportation, at a community event, at a gym or fitness class. You don't have to have deep conversations. You can just do small talk. This line is moving so slowly today, isn't it? Do you know if this is the right line for checkout? These apples look really fresh. Do you shop here often? The key is keeping it simple and low pressure. You're not trying to make a new best friend. You're just having a pleasant interaction with another human being. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine you're waiting at a bus stop. There's another person waiting next to you. You could spend the whole time looking at your phone, awkwardly not talking to anyone. Or you could say, "Do you know if this bus is usually on time?" Or, "Do you catch this bus often?" If they seem open to talking, you can continue. If they seem like they want to be left alone, that's okay too. Not every person will want to have a chat, and that's totally normal. Here's another scenario. You're at the grocery store and you're looking at different types of tomatoes. Someone else is looking at tomatoes too. You could say, "Do you know which ones are usually the best?" Or, "I never know which ones to pick. Do you have a preference?" Most people are happy to help or share a tip. And now you've had a little interaction. You've practiced English, and maybe you've even learned something useful. The beautiful thing about talking to strangers is that the stakes feel lower. If the conversation doesn't go well, you're probably never going to see this person again, so there's less pressure. You can be more relaxed. And sometimes the best conversations happen with strangers because there's no history, there's no expectation. There's just 2 people being in the moment together. I want you to challenge yourself this week. I want you to have a conversation with at least one person you don't know. It doesn't have to be long. It just has to be real. Be friendly. Ask a question. Listen to their answer. Maybe ask a follow-up question. Notice how it feels. Notice that the person is probably a nice human being who appreciates the interaction. Notice that you survived it, and then next week, do it again. All right, here's something that can completely change how native speakers perceive your English. It's not the words themselves, it's how you say them, your tone, and your pace. If you speak too fast, people can't understand you. They might not catch individual words. They might not follow the rhythm and flow of what you're saying. And even if your pronunciation is perfect, if you're speaking too quickly, communication breaks down. On the other hand, if you speak too slowly, it can sound unnatural. It can be hard for people to follow. It can also sound like you're unsure of yourself or uncertain about what you're saying. The goal is to find a rhythm that's clear and natural. Not super fast like you're rushing, but not so slow that it sounds like you're thinking through every word. One way to find this is to listen to native speakers and try to match their pace. Not exactly, because everyone speaks at slightly different speeds, but in the ballpark. Tone is equally important. If you say something in a happy, warm tone, it sounds completely different than if you say the exact same thing in a cold, distant tone. For example, "Hi, how are you?" Think about it. If you're asking someone how they are, and you're doing it like you genuinely care how they are, and you're interested in them, they're going to respond warmly. But if you're saying it like you're just going through the motions and you don't really care, they're going to pick up on that immediately. When you're having conversations in English, try to match your tone to the situation. If it's a friendly, casual conversation, let your tone be warm and open. If it's a more serious or professional situation, let your tone be respectful and clear. Here's a practice exercise that I found really helpful. Record yourself saying something simple like, "Hi, how are you?" or "I'm really happy to see you." Listen back. Does it sound warm? Does it sound genuine? Or does it sound flat and emotionless? Now try again, but this time imagine you're talking to someone you really love to see them, and you're genuinely happy to see them. Say the same words, but with more emotion, more energy, more warmth. Listen back. The difference is probably going to be shocking. Same words, completely different message. This is actually something that native speakers do naturally. They modulate their tone, they change their pace, they add emotion to their words. And when you start doing this too, your English immediately sounds more natural and more human. One thing that really helps is to listen to native English speakers and pay attention to how they speak, not just what they say. Listen to the rise and fall of their voice. Listen to where they pause. Listen to where they emphasize words. You can do this by watching movies, watching TED Talks, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos. Pick something that interests you and listen actively, paying attention to the rhythm and tone of how they speak. Then practice. Find a short passage, a few sentences, and practice saying it the way you heard it. Copy their tone, copy their case, copy their pauses. This is called shadowing, and it's incredibly powerful for improving your natural speaking ability. One of the most important qualities in a good conversationalist is curiosity, the genuine desire to understand other people and learn what they think and what they experience. When you're curious, you ask better questions. When you're curious, you listen better. When you're curious, people feel like you genuinely care about them. And here's the beautiful thing. Everyone is interesting if you ask them the right questions. Everyone has a story. Everyone has experiences and thoughts and perspectives that are different from yours. If you struggle to keep conversations going, one of the best strategies is to lean on your curiosity. Ask about the other person. Most people love talking about themselves, and they'll happily share if they sense that you're genuinely interested. You could ask things like, "What brought you to this city? What's something you've learned recently that surprised you? What are you passionate about? What's something on your bucket list? What's the best advice you've ever received? These are interesting questions. They invite people to think about themselves and share something real. Here's something I found. People generally prefer talking about themselves to talking about other people. So if you're ever struggling to keep a conversation going, just ask more questions about the other person. People appreciate being listened to and being asked about themselves. There's a concept called the curiosity loop, and it works like this. You're curious about something the other person said. You ask a question. They answer. That answer sparks a new curiosity in you. You ask another question. They answer again, and on and on. This is how conversations naturally flow when they're working well. You're both curious, you're both asking questions, you're both learning about each other. If you struggle with this, it might help to remind yourself that conversation is about connection, not about proving how much you know. So stop trying to impress the other person with your knowledge or your opinions. Instead, be interested in them. Ask them questions. Let them talk. This is actually easier than trying to come up with brilliant things to say. It takes the pressure off you. You don't have to be smart or funny or interesting. You just have to be interested. Here's what I want you to practice. Think about someone you know, a friend or a coworker or a family member. Now I want you to have a conversation with them, but before you start, decide that your goal is to ask questions and learn something about them that you didn't know before. Don't worry about what you're going to talk about. Don't prepare talking points. Just go in with curiosity and see where it leads. Ask follow-up questions. Show genuine interest. At the end of the conversation, notice how it felt. Did it feel easier than usual? Did the person seem more engaged? Did you learn something interesting about them? That's the power of curiosity. It makes conversations easier because you're not trying to entertain the other person. You're just trying to understand them. Okay, let's talk about something that stresses a lot of people out. Silence. That moment when someone finishes talking and neither of you says anything for a second or two. The silence feels so loud and so awkward, and you're panicking because you think you should say something. But here's a secret. Silence is not the enemy. Silence is actually normal. Silence is a natural part of conversation. Native speakers, they think. They collect their thoughts. They pause before answering questions to make sure they're going to say what they mean. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, when you're learning a second language, taking a pause to think is a sign of confidence, not a sign of weakness. It shows that you're thoughtful. You're not just blurting out the first thing that comes to your mind. So if there's a moment of silence, don't panic. Don't rush to fill it with words. Just breathe. You don't have to say something immediately. The other person doesn't expect you to. If the silence is getting a little too long, you can use one of those phrases we talked about earlier. Let me think for a second. Or, that's a good question. Or you can ask the other person something. What do you think about that? These give you a moment to collect your thoughts while keeping the conversation alive. Here's the thing about pauses. They actually help communication. They give both people time to think. They slow things down so you're not just rapidly exchanging words. They create space for real thought and real connection. I used to think that fluent speech meant no pauses, that the best speakers just talked on and on without stopping. But that's not true. The best speakers are comfortable pausing. They're comfortable thinking out loud. They're comfortable with silence. Practice this. In your next conversation, when someone asks you a question, don't answer immediately. Take a breath. Take a moment. Then answer. Notice how it feels. Notice if the person seems impatient or if they seem fine with it. Chances are they're totally fine with it. Most people are happy to give you a second to think. Here's another exercise. Practice thinking out loud in English. Pick a topic and talk about it without preparing. Let me see. What do I think about coffee? Well, I think coffee is wonderful. I love it in the morning. It makes me feel awake and ready for the day. I don't drink it in the afternoon because it keeps me awake at night. I prefer it black or with just a little bit of milk. My favorite coffee is from this place near my house. They have this specific roast that is just perfect. You're thinking out loud. You're pausing between sentences. You're adding, well, and let me see, and those pauses. And you know what? You sound more natural, not less natural. Because that's how real humans actually speak. We think out loud, we pause, we sometimes restart sentences. We're not reading from a script. So embrace silence. Use it as a tool. Give yourself permission to think before you speak. And notice that the conversations don't fall apart. They actually feel more real and more natural. Let me tell you about one of the most powerful tools you have for conversations: stories. Stories are magic. When you tell a story, you're not just sharing information. You're creating a picture in someone's mind. You're inviting them into an experience. You're creating emotion and connection. People remember stories way longer than they remember facts or statements. If I say to you, coffee is hot, you might forget that 5 minutes later. But if I tell you a story about the time I spilled hot coffee all over myself at a meeting and how embarrassed I was, that story is going to stick with you. You're going to remember it because it has emotion and narrative and it paints a picture. When you turn your experiences into stories, even little short stories, you become a much more interesting conversationalist. Instead of saying, I watched a movie yesterday, you could say, oh, I watched this incredible movie yesterday. It was so suspenseful. I was literally on the edge of my seat the whole time. There was this one scene where I thought I knew what was going to happen, but then completely surprised me, and I actually gasped out loud. It's one of the best movies I've seen in years. Now you're not just telling someone you watched a movie. You're inviting them into the experience of watching the movie. You're sharing your emotion. You're creating curiosity because they probably want to know more about the movie or which movie it was. Here's another example. Instead of, I went shopping, you could say, oh, I went shopping on Saturday and it was such a chaotic experience. The store was absolutely packed. I couldn't find a parking spot, so I had to circle around for like 15 minutes. And then when I finally got inside, the lines were so long. But you know what? While I was waiting in line, I ran into an old friend that I hadn't seen in years. We completely lost track of time catching up. So I ended up leaving the store even later than I came, but it was so worth it because it was such a great reunion. That's a story. You started with going shopping, but you added details. You added emotion. You added a turning point where something unexpected happened, and now it's interesting. Storytelling is a skill that you can develop and improve. The more you practice turning your experiences into stories, the more natural it becomes. Here's how to practice. Think about something simple that happened to you, like going to the grocery store, or taking the bus, or getting coffee. Now try telling it like a story. Start with where you were. Add details about what you saw or heard or felt. Include something unexpected or interesting that happened. End with how you felt or what you learned. Do this a few times out loud. Get comfortable with the rhythm of storytelling. Then use these little stories in your real conversations. People are going to find you so much more interesting when you tell stories instead of just reporting facts, and you're going to find conversations easier because you have more to say. Stories are also a great way to recover if you make a mistake or if the conversation lulls. You can just launch into a story and everyone's attention is back on you and the conversation is moving again. Okay, we've talked about a lot of strategies and skills for having better conversations in English. But underneath all of it, what you really need is confidence. And confidence is something you have to build. Confidence doesn't just appear. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel completely confident speaking English. Confidence is built through repeated action, through practice, through small wins, through proving to yourself over and over again that you can do this. Here's how you build confidence. You speak every single day. You seek out opportunities to practice. You notice when things go well. You celebrate small wins. You give yourself permission to mess up and keep going anyway. The best way to build confidence is daily practice, not once a week, every single day. And it doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to have a long conversation with a native speaker every day, although that would be great if you could. But you can talk to yourself in English. You can narrate your day in English. You can describe what you're doing as you're doing it. Now I'm making breakfast. I'm chopping vegetables. I'm heating the pan. I'm cooking the eggs. You can have imaginary conversations. Hi, how are you? I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How was your day? It was really busy, but good. You can read out loud. You can watch videos and repeat what the speaker said. You can listen to podcasts and try to understand as much as you can. The more you expose yourself to English and the more you practice producing English, the more confident you become. Here's a confidence-building routine that I recommend. Every morning, do these 3 things. First, say 3 positive affirmations about your English. I am improving my English every day. I can understand more English than I could last month. I am brave and I'm not afraid to make mistakes. Second, read something out loud. A paragraph from a book, an article, a passage from the internet. Just read something out loud and notice how your voice sounds. Third, speak for 1 minute about your day. Look in the mirror and just talk. Tell yourself about your plans for the day or what you're looking forward to. It might feel silly, but this daily habit of hearing your own voice speaking English is incredibly powerful. Do this every single day for 1 month. I promise you, at the end of the month, you're going to feel significantly more confident. Because confidence is built through action and repetition. The more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you do it, the less scary it becomes. And here's something important. Notice the small wins. Did you have a conversation today without freezing? That's a win. Did you speak for 2 minutes without stopping? That's a win. Did you ask a question in English? That's a win. Did you understand most of what someone said to you? That's a win. These small wins add up. They prove to yourself that you're capable. They build momentum. They create real confidence. Here's something that can absolutely transform your ability to speak English naturally and fluently: learning to think in English. Most people who are learning English do this thing where they think in their native language and then translate to English. And that process is slow. It takes mental energy. It makes you pause and stutter and lose the flow of the conversation. But if you can train your brain to think directly in English without going through your native language first, your speaking becomes so much faster and so much more natural. Here's the thing. At first, this is going to feel really hard. Your brain is used to thinking in your native language. That's the language you've been thinking in since you were born. Asking it to suddenly think in English is like asking someone to use their non-dominant hand to write. It's possible, but it takes practice. But with consistent practice, it becomes easier, and eventually, it becomes automatic. Here's how to practice thinking in English. Start small. Start with the environment around you. Look around the room. Name everything you see in English. Table, chair, window, pen, coffee cup, laptop. Do this throughout the day. When you're at work, name things. When you're at home, name things. Then move beyond naming to describing. Don't just think chair. Think, this is a comfortable blue chair. It has armrests. I like to sit in this chair when I work. Then move to action. When you're doing something, narrate it in English in your head. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm using my toothbrush. The toothpaste tastes minty. Now I'm rinsing my mouth with water. I'm drying my face with a towel. This might sound silly, but it's actually incredibly powerful. You're training your brain to operate in English. You're building neural pathways that allow you to think in English without translating from your native language. As you get more comfortable, you can move to more complex thinking. Think about your day in English. Think about your feelings in English. Have internal conversations in English. For example, if you're anxious about something, instead of thinking about it in your native language, try thinking about it in English. I am a little nervous about my presentation tomorrow. I have prepared well. I know my material. I am going to do a good job. Even if I make a mistake, that's okay. I can recover and keep going. At first, this is going to be slow. Your brain is going to have to work hard. But after a few weeks of consistent practice, it becomes faster. After a few months, it becomes more natural. And when you reach the point where you can think in English without translating from your native language, something magical happens. Your speaking becomes so much more fluent. You don't have that delay while you're translating. The English just comes out. I want you to commit to this for just 1 week. Spend at least 5 minutes every single day thinking and speaking in English without translating. Start with naming things, then move to describing, then move to narrating your actions. At the end of the week, notice if anything has changed. Notice if you're finding it easier to respond in conversations. Notice if you're thinking faster in English. It's a game changer. All right, so you know how to start conversations, you know how to keep them going, but what about when you need to end them? How do you wrap things up without being rude or abrupt? Ending conversations is actually a skill, and it's worth learning because it's one of the ways you leave a good impression. First of all, you can end a conversation that's naturally coming to an end. You notice the other person is looking at their watch, or they're starting to seem tired, or there's a natural pause in the conversation. That's a good time to wrap things up. You can say things like, well, I should probably let you go, or I don't want to keep you, or I should get going, but it was so nice talking to you. Or you can be more direct. I have to head out, but I really enjoyed our conversation. I need to get back to work, but thanks so much for chatting with me. Well, I should get going, but I hope we can do this again sometime. These phrases let the other person know that you're ending the conversation, and they appreciate it because you're acknowledging that both of you probably have other things to do. If it's someone you might see again, you can express that. I hope we can talk again soon. Maybe we can grab coffee sometime. It was really nice meeting you. I'm sure I'll see you around. These leave the door open for future connection. If it's someone you probably won't see again, you can be warm and appreciative. It was really great meeting you. You made my day so much better. Thanks for making the wait so much shorter with this great conversation. I really appreciate taking the time to talk to me. People appreciate when you acknowledge that the conversation meant something to you. Well, I think this is my stop coming up. It was really nice talking to you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. They say, you too, safe travels. You say, thanks, take care, and you get off the train. That's it. You've ended the conversation gracefully and left a good impression. Practice this scene a few times. Use different variations. Get comfortable with the rhythm of ending conversations so when it actually happens in real life, you know what to do. The key is to be warm, genuine, and appreciative. Let the person know that talking to them was a good experience, and then say goodbye before things get awkward. One thing that really makes conversations flow and feel more natural is humor. You don't have to be a comedian. You don't have to make people laugh until they cry. But a little bit of light humor can completely change the tone of a conversation. Light humor makes people feel comfortable. It shows that you're relaxed and not taking yourself too seriously. It creates a sense of camaraderie, like you and the other person are in on the same joke. The key is to keep it simple and kind. You're not trying to be edgy or mean. You're trying to be warm and funny in a gentle way. Here are some types of light humor that work well in conversations. There's gentle self-deprecation. You can poke fun at yourself in a way that's endearing. I always try to be on time, but somehow I'm always 5 minutes late. I don't know how I do it. There's observational humor. You can comment on something you're both experiencing. This line is so long. I think we're going to grow old waiting to pay for our groceries. There's play on words and puns. These can be corny, but if you deliver them with self-awareness, people actually enjoy them. I'd tell you a chemistry joke, but I know I wouldn't get a reaction. There's shared commiseration. You can bond over something that's annoying or frustrating that you're both experiencing. Mondays are the worst, aren't they? I feel like I need a weekend to recover from the weekend. The thing about humor is that it requires timing and tone. You can't just say something funny. You have to say it in a way that shows you're being lighthearted and playful, not mean or serious. Practice light humor by listening to comedians and noticing how they deliver jokes. Notice their timing. Notice their facial expressions and tone. Notice how they set up the joke and then deliver the punchline. Then try your own light humor in conversations. Start with safe, observational humor or gentle self-deprecation. Get comfortable with making light comments about the situation you're in. People are going to enjoy talking to you so much more when you can bring some lightness and humor to the conversation. It makes things feel easier. It makes things feel fun. Let me address something that I know worries a lot of people. Accents. Your accent when you speak English. I'm going to tell you something that might be surprising. Your accent is not your enemy. Your accent is not a problem. Your accent is a part of who you are and how you speak. Everyone has an accent. Native English speakers have accents. People from London have a different accent than people from Texas have a different accent, then people from Texas have a different accent, then people from Australia have a different accent, then people from India have a different accent, then people from Canada. Accents are normal. They're natural. They're actually interesting and beautiful. What matters in communication is not whether you have an accent. What matters is whether people can understand you. If you speak clearly and at a reasonable pace, people will understand you, even if you have an accent. I've heard people from all over the world speak English, and the ones who are the easiest to understand are the ones who speak clearly and slowly enough that people can hear each word, not the ones who sound like native speakers. So instead of spending your energy trying to change your accent, spend your energy on clarity and pronunciation of individual words. Make sure you're pronouncing the sounds correctly. Make sure you're not mumbling. Make sure you're speaking at a pace that people can follow. That's going to do so much more for your communication than trying to sound like someone from America or England or Australia. Here's a practice exercise. Record yourself. Listen back. Can you understand what you said? Are the words clear? Are you speaking at a good pace? If yes, great, you're doing well. If no, then focus on specific words that are unclear. Practice those words. Record yourself again. But don't worry about changing your accent. Don't try to sound like someone else. Your accent is part of your identity. It's part of what makes you unique. In fact, many people find accents beautiful and interesting. People are often interested in where someone is from when they hear their accent. It's something that can create connection and interest, not something to be ashamed of. So speak with your own voice, develop clarity and good pace, and let your accent be what it is. Okay, here's something I want you to really hear. Learning a new language is a massive achievement. The fact that you're even attempting to speak English puts you ahead of so many people in the world. Most native English speakers only speak one language. You're out here trying to master a second language, or maybe a third or fourth. That takes courage. That takes dedication. That takes willingness to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. I want you to be proud of yourself. Be proud of every attempt. Be proud of every conversation, whether it goes smoothly or not. Be proud that you're showing up and trying. One of the biggest things I've learned from my own language learning journey is that every mistake is a step forward. I don't mean that in a corny way. I mean it literally. Every time you make a mistake, your brain is processing that mistake and learning from it. You're building new neural pathways. You're expanding your understanding of how the language works. You're expanding your ability to produce the language. So mistakes are not failures. Mistakes are the learning process. And the people who learn languages the fastest are not the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who make a lot of mistakes and keep going. They're the ones who are brave enough to speak even when they're not sure. I want you to commit right now to something. I want you to commit to speaking English every single day, even when you're not sure, even when you know you might mess up, even when you're scared. Because that's where the magic happens. That's where real confidence is built. That's where real fluency comes from. It's not from perfect studying or perfect preparation. It's from action. It's from repetition. It's from putting yourself out there and trying again and again. Every conversation is a new chance to improve. Every interaction is practice. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. So don't wait for perfect English to start speaking. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start now. Speak now. Make mistakes now. Learn now. I want to end this podcast with this message. Your voice matters. Your thoughts matter. Your perspective matters. You don't need to wait until your English is perfect to share what you think. You don't need to wait until you sound like a native speaker to express your ideas. You don't need to wait until you feel completely confident. Right now, as you are, your voice matters. The world needs to hear from people like you who are learning and growing and pushing themselves beyond their comfort zone. The world needs your unique perspective. The world needs your story. So speak up. Talk to the person at the coffee shop. Ask someone for directions. Chat with the person waiting next to you. Have that conversation you've been nervous about. These small moments are your practice sessions. These small moments are how you grow. These small moments are how you discover that you're more capable than you thought. Talk to the people around you. Share your thoughts. Ask your questions. Listen to their answers. You don't need perfect English. You just need to be brave. You just need to be willing to try. And I promise you, the more you try, the easier it gets. The more you speak, the faster you grow. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope this podcast has given you tools and strategies, and most importantly, permission to just start speaking. If this has helped you, please do me a favor. Subscribe to this podcast, share it with a friend who's also learning English. And make sure you check out the podcast playlist on my channel. I have so many more episodes covering everything from grammar to vocabulary to pronunciation to exactly what we talked about today, real conversational skills. You can binge the entire playlist and learn so much more. Each episode builds on the ones before it, so if you go through them in order, you're going to get the most out of them. I'm Lily. And I'm so proud of you for investing in your English. Keep speaking, keep growing, keep connecting. Your English voice matters, and I can't wait to hear what amazing things you're going to say.